When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you.
Well, I was born April 29th of 1944 at Lee Memorial Hospital in Norfolk, Virginia, right close to downtown Norfolk. My father was David W. Boling, and my mother was Evelyn Vaughn Boling. My fondest memories are being around the naval base and being around where my father worked and seeing a lot of the big ships come back and seeing 2 German U-boats that had been caught in the submarine nets off of Fort Wool and were pulled up on the beaches. The biggest memory is seeing the Missouri go out of Willoughby and run aground. The largest grounding of a naval ship in naval history. In high school, I was a wrestler. I went out to try out for football, and the football coach, who was a rough kind of guy, said, "You know, I think you're too small." I had just one match that was a pretty tough match for me, and the guy put me on my back, and all I remember is my mother from the stands yelling, "Joseph, get up!" And I did. 2 things made you aware. First of all, we still had the draft, so you were reporting. Correct. And then as soon as you graduated, you got a little note from your draft board that said, "Why don't you come see us?" Pretty soon after I graduated, I realized that since I had a single-digit number, I was going to go. I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey for basic training. I got a long weekend leave in November and went home, and Debbie and I were married in Thanksgiving of '66. Our first stop was in Guam, and my first great memories of where I was headed was standing and looking out and watching the B-52s take off of Guam, headed for Vietnam. We were to be a blocking force for a major action where we thought that we had trapped a North Vietnamese Viet Cong units of something close to battalion strength, hard to tell. We were on the Song Dong Nai River at that point. My 43 men that particular day were dropped into that LZ, and I thought it was going to be a pretty quiet day. We started taking fire right away. It was bad. It was almost the most intense I'd seen up to that point. We saw men who had tied themselves up in the top of palm trees. So they were shooting down. I started calling for help because I knew I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I had run into the front end of that unit and they were on the wrong side of the river. So I went up on the Navy's net and got this guy and told him exactly where I was. I said, "I know exactly where I am because I just got off the choppers." He said, "You got to move." And I said, "No." His last quote to me was, "You don't understand. This is the USS New Jersey." You could see it coming through the sky. They counted it down. Best thing about that is not a shot was fired after they fired. Dead on target. by the time I got through the San Francisco airport, I knew that things weren't right in the country because it wasn't a lot of clapping and receiving people when they saw a military uniform. Except the wonderful stewardesses on the airplane who took me and put me in first class. And I'm not sure I remembered my name by the time I got off. Since I had 6 months, I guess, to do before my time was up. So they weren't going to forgive that. They were going to send me somewhere. Where do you want to go? I was a part of the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd Infantry, which is the old guard. I'll go be in the parade unit. They sent me back this letter and said, thanks for your letter, your request, but you're too short. So I sent back a letter that said, that's nice to know that I can fight for you, but I can't march for you. There happened to be a placement group, a group called Ledman Associates, I've never forgotten, that kind of took it upon themselves to work on trying to help military folks find jobs. So I had sent them a resume, actually from Vietnam, and they had set up 4 or 5 interviews. So I went down and interviewed with the Seaboard National Bank. There was this long board table, and there were these 5 guys sitting on the other side of the board table, and my chair was about 7, 8, 10 feet away from the board table in the middle of the room by myself. All we talked about for 2 hours was Vietnam. And when that was over, they asked me to join their training program, and that's how I got into the banking business. Soon after that, I was sent to be an assistant branch manager, and I enjoyed it right off the bat. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed the trust that's in the banking business. I enjoyed the helping people. So then I spent 5 years in Newport News until they came to me one day, and I think I was 35 years old at that point, and said, we want you to go to Stanton, Virginia, and be president of the bank in Stanton. Yeah, 84, we went to Richmond. And the job I had in Richmond put me in association with community banks. Actually, that's how I met the people in Middleburg, was through lending support. And they said, well, why don't you come be president? There were 4 community banks left in Loudoun County at that time. This is 1993. Before we get to 1995, there is just one. And I was able to go to Purcellville and find the best bankers that were in Purcellville and put them in that branch. And I knew, because it was all done, that was going to be a great buy and a great location on Catoctin Circle. But one of somebody I was talking to at that point in time looked at me and said, if you do this, my stock will never be worth what it is today. And a few years later, he came back and said, I was right. It's not, but it's fine.
Nice.
Windy Hill in Middleburg provides subsidized housing for people in the 30% of area median income and below. And the majority of those people had worked on the farms, had retired, and barely had much Social Security. And that's why they were living in the conditions that they were living in. I joined the board of Loudoun Hospital in 1998. I was involved in in a lot of the financial issues that hit the hospitals back then. So it was a hard job of working through that 98, 99 into 2000, but we were able to redo the base of the hospital to a point where it could continue to grow. The first thing I think about is that you're always willing to do it yourself. You can't lead unless you've either been there or you're willing to do it with them. Well, I think that comes from your whole family background or your Christian background, whatever it is. I think that your examples are set for that. My father was a very quiet, very honorable, do the right thing, and yet underneath, if he needed to be, he could be tough. But he wasn't. That wasn't his style. And I picked up. Hopefully, I got some of those genes. First one is the love and support of your grandchildren comes from the way you think of them and treat them and help them along. And all I remember is my mother from the stands yelling, "Joseph, get up!"
When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true.